Today, we're diving into a really fascinating ancient Buddhist text. It's called the Sūtra of the Maiden Yūye, and at its heart is a family drama that honestly feels like it could happen today. It's a story all about pride, respect, and a pretty incredible transformation.
So just for a second, put yourself in this situation. You've just welcomed a new daughter-in-law into the family. Everyone should be happy, right? But what happens when her pride is so intense that it starts causing chaos in the household? What do you do? Because that's the exact problem that kicks off this whole story.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're in the ancient Indian city of Śrāvastī. A respected, wealthy elder named Sudatta has just arranged what he thinks is a perfect marriage for his son. But what's supposed to be a happy time very quickly turns into a full-blown family crisis. And here's the heart of the problem. The bride, this young woman named Yūye, is described as being unbelievably beautiful, but her pride and her arrogance are just as extreme. She won't show any respect to her husband, her in-laws, anyone. And you can just imagine the tension building up in that house. It's becoming unbearable. So the family is really stuck, They're in a total bind. They know that using force or physical punishment is just wrong. The text literally says it is not the right way. But they also realize that if they do nothing, her behavior is just going to get worse day by day. They need help, but it has to be a wiser kind of help.
So who do you call when you have a problem like this? Well, in ancient Śrāvastī, you call the Buddha. And he doesn't just, knock on the door. He appears in this incredible blaze of golden light that completely fills Yūye's room. The sheer power and strangeness of it all is enough to shake her out of her arrogance and actually get her to come out and listen for the first time.
So the Buddha's there. What's his first move? Does he scold her? Nope. He does something way smarter. He starts by talking about the bigger picture of what it meant to be a woman at that time. He begins with a teaching on what the Sūtra calls a woman's burdens.
And first things first, he goes right after the source of her pride, her appearance. He basically tells her, look, a beautiful face isn't what true beauty is. That fades. He explains that real beauty, the kind that lasts and earns you respect, comes from having a good heart and doing good things. It's about your character, not your looks.
Then he lays out what the text calls the three hindrances. He describes a woman's life as this journey of constant dependence. First, you're dependent on your parents. Then, you're dependent on your husband. And when you're old, you're dependent on your son. The idea here is that a woman is never really her own boss, never fully in control of her life.
And if that wasn't enough, he then lists these 10 evils, which are basically 10 major hardships that paint a very bleak picture of a woman's life in that society. Everything from her parents being disappointed at her birth, to the pain of childbirth, to a life of fear and dependency. The message is pretty clear. And it makes you wonder, right? Maybe Yūye's arrogance isn't just arrogance. Maybe it's her own twisted kind of armor against a world where she feels totally powerless. Okay, so after laying out all of these challenges, this really tough reality, the Buddha completely shifts gears. He moves from describing the problem to offering a way out. He gives Yūye a choice, a real path forward, by explaining that there are 5 different kinds of wife a woman can choose to be. And this is just a brilliant teaching method. He essentially asks her, okay, Yūye, which one of these are you going to be? You could be a mother wife who loves her husband like a child, or a vassal wife who serves him like a king, maybe a sister wife who respects him like an older brother, or a handmaid wife serving him like a master. Or you could be what the text calls a wife, a true partner, someone respectful and devoted who makes the whole family stronger. And just in case the message wasn't clear enough, he puts it in black and white. He contrasts specific, everyday behaviors. On the one hand, you've got the good deeds, being hardworking, selfless, responsible, patient, and respectful. And on the other hand, you have the evil deeds, being lazy, selfish, gossiping, and just generally causing drama. The choice couldn't be more practical or more clear. So, faced with this incredibly clear and really compassionate teaching, something inside Yūye finally snaps. All that pride just crumbles away. This is her big moment, her awakening.
And her reaction is instant. It's powerful. She says, from this day forward, I will correct my past and cultivate my future, following your revered teachings. She's not making excuses. She's owning her behavior, and she's committing right then and there to a new path.
But this isn't just an emotional, I'm sorry moment. No, she backs it up with action. She asks the Buddha to forgive her, and then she asks to officially become a student by taking the 5 precepts, which are like the core ethical vows for a lay Buddhist.
And you can see,
These precepts are a blueprint for a whole new way of life. It's way bigger than just how she acts at home. It's about universal values, being compassionate to all life, being generous instead of greedy, being honest in your relationships and your speech, and keeping your mind clear. Her transformation is now a complete spiritual reboot.
So now that she's on this new path, Yu wants to understand what's really at stake here. And this leads us to the final part of the sutra, which gets into the cosmic consequences of her choices, all through the lens of karma and rebirth.
Being a good student now, Yu asks the million-dollar question. She basically says, okay, tell me straight, what's the payoff for being a good wife and what's the punishment for being a bad one? She wants to know the long-term consequences.
And the Buddha's answer is incredibly direct. A good wife gets honor and respect in this lifetime and gets reborn in a heaven realm. If she comes back as a human, she'll be born into a royal or noble family. The bad wife, on the other hand, gets hatred and jealousy now, gets reborn in hell later, and if she comes back as a human, it'll be as a slave or a servant. The karmic paths are starkly different.
And as he finishes his teaching, the Buddha does something amazing. He names the sutra after her, the Yu Sutra, making her story a timeless lesson for everyone. And then he makes one final, really extraordinary promise to any woman who hears this teaching and actually lives by it.
And here it is. This is the big promise. He says she will relinquish this female body and never receive one again. Now, remember everything he said earlier about the burdens and hardships of being a woman? In that context, this was seen as the ultimate spiritual prize, complete liberation from that specific cycle of suffering.
And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. In a story that so carefully details the burdens put on women in that time and place, the ultimate reward for living a good life is to escape being reborn as a woman. So, what does a promise like that mean to you, hearing it today?